I would tell you the skill that I believe most people lack is actually developing their mindset and belief system. Your experiences and what happened to you in your life. I don't know your story or what has happened, but we've all had things happen where you had a choice to get up or to lay down. My best self is when I'm competing. I've yet to find someone accomplish something great in their life and they didn't compete. And most of you today that are listening to this, you know it because I'm speaking to you right now. You know it. You are not competing to your fullest potential today. It's time to get back in the game and actually do the things that you were called to do and show up and compete in every area of your life.
Remember, adversity is your advantage.
Hey friends, cannot wait for you to check out this new episode of the CEO Show podcast where I sat down and interviewed my new friend, Brian Covey. Now, Brian is a professional soccer player turned author, turned entrepreneur, turned keynote speaker. So if you want to develop a rock solid mindset, if you want to learn how to level up your leadership ability, you're going to want to check out this episode. Hey, welcome back, friends, to another amazing episode of the CEO Show with Bryce Henson. I got an awesome guest today. Brian, welcome to the show.
Bryce, thanks for having me, my friend. We're going to jam today, and I'm glad we finally got to connect up and do this.
Totally. Well, lots of good content we're going to attack. If you're new to the show, the three principles that we teach are we teach leadership, we promote capitalism, and we defend free speech. And we have a world-class leader that I know I just did an intro to. But Brian, you have a storied career from a sports background, then going into real estate, and then now being an executive vice president at a major real estate mortgage lender throughout the country. I want to kind of talk a little bit about your leadership journey. So, from the fact of your background in sports, you were a D1 athlete, played college soccer at the highest of levels. I know you had to acquire some good leadership principles through your story, or through your sports journey. So I'd love just to unpack a little bit about that for our audience.
Well, yeah, I'll go back, and it's good timing too. This last weekend, I was back in Memphis, and both my parents lived there, and that's where I grew up with my older brother that was 5 years older. My dad was a pastor and a psychologist. And so I share that with people so they have some context of, pastor's kid, but also psychologist. And so we talked a lot and we had lots of conversations. And my dad was the best example of a leader, someone that went back later in their life and said, you know what, I don't want to go this route. I want to go this other route. Went back and got his master's and his PhD and really fulfilled his calling of he wanted to serve other people. And now he actually helps pastors and counsels youth that are drug addicted or marriage counseling and people that are just struggling. And so I had this dad who led that way and then mixed that with the best soccer coaches in the world. And I was able to play at some of the highest levels and train with the US national team and all these things. And I go, my leadership really began with at home and on a soccer field. And throughout those journeys of coaches that cared about you enough to push you beyond your limit, they cared enough to challenge you and they pushed you to do things that were uncomfortable, right? And we talk about all that today. Bryce and I started to learn about leadership in high school, even of my junior and senior year. I was fortunate enough to be captain, which by the way is voted by the players, not the coach. And it was the first time I started to really understand a little bit about when people pick you to be a leader, people follow what you do more than what you say. Everything you do on and off the field matters. It's more than just your performance, right? A lot of times we think about results, but I started to realize it was the things you did, because in high school, you can get into trouble, you can go the wrong directions, hang out with the wrong people, all that stuff. Not saying I was perfect, but I am saying you start to realize you have some responsibility. And the same was true my junior and senior year of college. Then I was able to recognize, because I was a little bit older, a little bit wiser, still hadn't figured out much, but I realized that was much more of a responsibility to lead. And it was different because people were coming in and out, right? New freshmen in every year, seniors are graduating, you had people transferring. And that was my journey to understand leadership and work with so many great coaches that I look back today and, Bryce, those are the foundations. Those are the people that I was introduced to that later on in my career, I sought out mentors. I sought out coaches. I wanted the best managers. My first job I took was in consumer finance, working in a strip center that I couldn't get hired anywhere else. And I get hired there strictly because they said they hired athletes. They love to train people. And they would give me a chance to build a career within their company. And I'm like, that's me. So from not being able to get a job to working with the right manager, I believe that was a catalyst that I'm still on the journey of leadership myself today.
Oh, I love that because I am too. I always say I'm a leadership expert, but also a student of leadership as well, having that white belt mentality. Because it's one of those things where you can always learn more, you can always grow a little bit more. And watching your content, obviously, just even today when you're just attacking the weights, hitting CrossFit, like you can get a little bit better every single day, even though you're a super fit guy. I want to go back a little bit about, good on you for being voted by your classmates to be, the captain, which says a lot. What do you think they saw in you, first and foremost? And my second question is really about whether leadership is a learned quality or if it's factory installed or a little bit both. So I'd love to get your perspective on that.
Two great questions. I would love to tell you it's because, I was doing all the right things all the time and all that stuff. And I tell everybody, truthfully, I think it was much lean towards the fact that I was a high performer, right? Like I was a good athlete. Like I recognize that. And I think that's where it started. And so I would invite everybody to consider that is your talents that God's given you will get you so far. But then there's skills that I'll break down in a minute that you have to learn along the way. And so I had the talent, right? Like God had given me an ability, even though I worked hard and yes, I did all of the extra practices and all the stuff. I was like, I did have some physical ability, right? To compete at that level.
Have to.
But I think what people saw was I was positive, I was encouraging, I was motivating. And I really got a lot of that from my mom is she was always positive about things, right? And she grew up and had tough upbringing and some things there that, she would always just handle things no matter what, Bryce. I just remember her smile on her face. People would come over to the house. It was the house that people would come to. Like the boys would want to come over in high school and they would want to have a meal there or hang out at our house. And I always think about if you can be positive and somebody that can encourage other people, you might be the one person that day that actually inspires and motivates them. So I think that's why I was given the opportunity both in high school and then in college as well was similarly that. College more so, I would say people saw the extra effort that I was doing. They saw how hard I fought and they saw, like we were talking about before the show starts, I was fortunate enough to earn a starting spot my freshman year, which is not normal.
Unheard of.
Very difficult.
Yeah.
Tons of pressure. And I think that helped me mature at a faster rate because that amount of pressure, we went on and set a record. We had over 5 games in a row, shutout, which being a goalkeeper. We weren't scored on, which is a team thing. And we're getting interviewed and like we're setting records as a team. And I'm like, is this what it's like? And like we're all just talking and learning and the upperclassmen are mentoring and like, we've never done this. And hey, we need to make sure we're ready for this. And so I was always just soaking in the experience and what could be learned. So I'll take part 2 of your question. I'll kind of piggyback what I shared is I believe everybody is given some God-given talent, whatever that might be. Like that is what's been given to you. And whether you see it, whether you don't see it, most of the time we don't see it all the way. Others will see it in us, but there's talent that you've been given. And really there's an opportunity for you to use those talents in the service of other people. When you start to unpack them, you start to show up. People talk about your why, your purpose. I'll break it down for you really simply as your talents are the things that God has uniquely given you that you look at other people and you're like, why doesn't it come as easy for them? Like, this is just the way I think. This is the way I believe. This is what I do. This is how I'm wired. Those are your talents. Now, where I think people fall short, this is what separates people from their greatness is while you may have all these talents and God has gifted you, you have to learn some skills. Like you can put a great athlete. If you were to take me out of soccer and go put me on a baseball field, I am no longer elite. I am no longer the same level. And so what that says to people is while I'm athletically talented, I need to learn skills. The skills I learned were on a soccer field. Like I knew the game, I studied the tape, I did the movement, I did the fundamentals, all those things. So in your life today, are you working on the skills such as communication? I think that's one of the biggest today in leadership that most people avoid. And I would tell you still to this day, the reason I get on stages and speak, or the reason that I do podcasts, or the reason that I'll go speak for free somewhere just to a small group is I always know my communication is the difference between our team and our company winning a little bit and winning a lot. And I would tell you, if you're a dad out there and you're married, Nicole and I have been married 22 years. We have 3 kids, 17, 15, and 9. My ability to communicate with all 3 of them well means a difference of like how well we raise them. Like if I can't communicate to them and listen and understand, I'm not going to be an effective dad or husband in that situation. So communication would be huge as a skill. The next one I think people have not really thought about, and you probably know this, is sales. And I was fortunate to start in consumer finances. You should understand sales, the full cycle. No matter what you do, you're selling something, product, service, your time, all these things are being sold. And most people don't go through and role play and practice and listen back. Like we would watch the tape in soccer. And so I would tell you, get really good at sales. Just last night, I'm watching Myron and I'm going through his closing framework of what he does for high ticket offers and things. And I'm trying to understand it. I'm writing it down. I'm studying what's there. And then this last one, I would tell you the skill that I believe most people lack is actually developing their mindset and belief system. Because what I know is what Brian believed as a 9-year-old, like my youngest, 15-year-old, 17-year-old, even 20 years ago. Those beliefs along the way have been debunked. Some of them have proven to be true, but along the way, what I have chosen to believe and how I've built my mindset is how I deal to adversity. And I had this, tell you the story today. We have an investment that's going completely sideways right now. And I'm on the phone with one of our advisors today and I'm like, here's what's happening. Here's what's going on. He's like, you're so calm about this. Brian, 20 years ago, 10 years ago, even Bryce, I'd have been pissed. I mean, I'd have been frantic. I would have been nervous. I would have just let everything fall apart. And so I share all that with you. So, I don't have it all figured out, but this progress wheel and this progress that I'm on, I do know that these things are learned. Those are not given. That is taken reps and experiences to learn.
Oh, Brian, man, so articulate and so spot on. Leadership is a skill. I mean, you hit it. You need to be able to acquire that. But interesting, going back to your initial topic, for me, when I look at leadership, I think there's the one factory installed component that I've had, and I know you have this as well, is the feeling of responsibility. And I think if you have the feeling of responsibility, because really leadership is owning it, right? Owning the responsibility. It's not pointing fingers. It's not getting razzled. It's not playing the blame game. It's really accepting full responsibility for your ability to execute. And that really, for me, has come factory installed. It had to come factory installed with you, just taking that leadership role in high school, carrying you through 4 years of university, playing at the highest levels. So I really appreciate that perspective. The other thing that I would just want to drill home and really acknowledge in what you said there is salesmanship. And I started my career in sales. And if you can't sell, you can't serve. And I look at leadership from a very similar framework as salesmanship. Salesmanship, you're selling a product or service, you're creating a transaction. From a leadership perspective, you're selling yourself, but you're also selling a vision towards where you want your organization, your teammates to go. So those skills are very intertwined. The last thing I want to drill in a little bit more is really your mindset, right? How you've developed a really championship mindset to take you through sports, to take you through your career. So let's talk a little bit about that, especially if our audience there is a man kind of struggling, they need to ratchet up their mindset. They get a little bit more dialed in. You clearly have a really strong mindset, but to your own words, you've developed a lot of that as well. How can our audience, our listener, develop a stronger mindset?
Yeah, I love the question. And I go back to when I was in high school, I was fortunate enough, my dad, again, being a psychologist, we learned the power of visualization, which then was very different than what I do now. So I'll kind of take you through this journey of, at that point, my dad's out there sharing with people about how you can actually visualize the plays before they happen and all this stuff. And everybody's like, man, does this stuff work? What's happening? Look, if you study, you look at Tom Brady, Kobe Bryant, some of the GOATs that are out there, you will quickly find out those guys mentally off the court and off the field did so much work. And this is where I would invite you, if you've never slowed down to visualize things in your own life, is to actually try this and experiment with it. Just do this for a week and actually visualize before you go into your day. What I'd want you to do is think about all the things that you want to have happen that day. I play the movie. I play the meetings in my head. I play this podcast in my head. Hey, I'm going to meet with Bryce. These are some of the questions he's going to ask me. These are some of the things that might come up today. So it's almost as if I've seen the movie. And when I'm in the moment, I've already been through it, right? It's rehearsal, it's practice, it's things that are there. And then I can free flow. I'm not stuck going, oh man, I haven't rehearsed at all. I'm not prepared. When you visualize your own success, I believe you're actually planting the seeds in your own mind, that your mind doesn't know the difference between what you just visualized and created and sometimes what is actual reality. And I've seen that happen in my life. You can also do it the other way. I had a coaching client yesterday walking into a very difficult conversation, is having to demote, potentially fire someone on their team, depending on how the conversation goes. And we're rehearsing that beforehand. We're talking about, I said, I want you to visualize walking in. What does the room look like? Where are you going to sit? Where are they going to sit? What's the first thing you're going to say? What's the energy you're putting out? We went through all the things that we wanted to have happen. And then I asked him, what could go wrong? I want you to play that out. When they get angry at you, they get frustrated at you, they start to blame you, they start to get very emotional at you because this is now threatening to them. How are you going to show up and respond? What's beautiful about that is once you've prepared yourself, you're like, okay, I'm anticipating this to happen. Just like on the field, we would anticipate things to not go our way. Anticipate these conversations or meetings or conversations that you're not looking forward to, like these difficult ones. How are you going to respond in that? So I would invite everybody to consider that part of it. And then the other part, Bryce, you talked about is I choose every day, I choose a CrossFit style workout because I like to every day push my body and my mind. I believe there's a very intimate connection there. And I want to get in every workout to the point to where I want to quit. I want to face that wall where I'm going, man, I could rest for a couple minutes. Hey, I really don't want to pick up that kettlebell right now. I don't want to go run right now. Like I want that to happen in my mind to know I've pushed myself. And then in that moment, I go, that's the moment. Now we go. Now we go. And if you can start to recognize things and in a way program in stress, program in yourself being in a situation, watch how your mindset will just start to grow much like a muscle over time. And so now, look, I call it the pain cave. I don't know what you guys, but like I get into workouts and there is a pain cave in certain workouts. And I go, you know what? This is where most people quit. This is where most people don't push as hard. This is where champions excel.
Oh.
And I tell myself these things. And so in the moment, I'm actually teaching our 9-year-old this, by the way. It's fascinating to see what you can teach people when you program in the mindset. And our son would tell you, we talk about, we do hard things. Champions compete every day, right? Like, and we say these things. So when you're in the moment, this is how you build your self-talk, which becomes your beliefs, which ultimately becomes your mindset. And I believe anybody can learn these skills. They weren't given. They were somewhat unlocked in a way of I had some of it, but I needed to really strengthen it. Much like an athlete had some talent, but you got to bring the skills along with it.
Brian, man, you fire me up. We are kindred spirits. I love this. I'm going to unpack a couple things you just said there. The pain cave. So for me, I get my workout 4:30 in the morning. I have a built out a home gym because of COVID. And then what I did recently in the last year and a half, I invested in a cold plunge. And 5:30 in the morning, even in Southern California, we have nice, beautiful weather. In the mornings, it's super cold because we have dry weather. And every single day, I have this mental thought as I finish my workout, and this little voice of the critic, if you will, is like, Bryce, take it easy. No one's watching. You can take it off today. And then I stop Brian. I'm like, this is why most people are not successful, because they're not willing to put in the work when no one else is watching. So that's my version of your pain cave. The second thing that really resonated with me is about your preparation. And from a leadership lens, I always teach my team, teach my coaching clients, the separation, your separation is in your preparation. And it just shows up in business and life. So I could not agree with you more. And the last thing you talked a little bit about was the word specifically. Actually, I want to take a step back and really reinforce this message for the audience. You said the word respond, not react. So when you put yourself in a mental fortitude and you're a strong leader, you're a strong professional, you put yourself into situations that tough things are going to happen, bad things are going to happen. And Bryce 1.0 as a leader would react to things, fly off the handle, get really bothered, hot and bothered. But Bryce 2.0 now takes a deep breath and responds to that situation. And Brian, that shows up in your leadership in spades. So I just want to reinforce that. Now, shifting gears, I want to talk a little bit about your competitive edge, your competitive mindset. In fact, the name of your podcast is Competitive Edge. So absolutely incredible. From your perspective, why is competition so important, and how have you found your competitive edge?
Oh man, I think we were wired to compete. I actually have yet to meet a person that wasn't wired to compete. And people say, well, I'm an introvert or I'm an extrovert. And we use these titles and all that. And actually, those are just stories we tell ourselves, right? Like we've just said, okay, that's a label, that's there. But deep down inside of us, if you go back generations, we were wired to compete, meaning you had to go out and get food. You had to take care of the house and do things that whatever your role was, you were competing. Because if you didn't win, you didn't have food on the table, you didn't have things there. Today, in a modern society, we're competing every day to make sure we have what we need. We're competing with what some people say that best version of yourself. And it's that little voice inside that tells you, you can do more. You're not doing enough here. You know what? You could drop that 10 pounds. And I always think that's just the difference between where you are and where you want to be. And what happens in between is the competition. And a lot of people have said, competition's negative or competition's this. Here's what I know. My best self is when I'm competing.
Amen.
It's just a fact.
Yeah.
Like, I've yet to find someone accomplish something great in their life and they didn't compete. They weren't striving for some goal. They weren't trying to break the 4-minute mile before that was done. They weren't trying to lift a certain amount of weight that was there. They weren't trying to break a sales goal. They weren't trying to make a certain amount of money to take their family on a vacation. They were competing to go earn the prize. And I think when people realize that every day is an opportunity to compete, and there is a scoreboard. I think what's beautiful about that is I get to create my scoreboard for what matters to me and how I define success, but I am competing for something. And what most people have done, Bryce, unfortunately, as I watch around, and you've probably seen this, is whether they realize it or not, they've moved themselves off the competition field and they're sitting on the sideline watching other people. And they're looking at social media and they're comparing themselves. They're looking at social media and they're wondering, well, why is that not me? Why don't I look like that? They're sitting back and they're not taking action and they're scrolling through Netflix or whatever it might be. And they're getting distracted by all these things and all these luxuries. When the reality is the purest form of competition sometimes is when I just go out and run by myself. It's just me against me.
You versus you, baby.
Because the truth is, no one cares how fast I ran. Nobody really cares how many miles I ran. But what I have learned in competing there is the amount of people I've inspired that you said, well, if Brian can make time for it, I can make time for it. If Brian's 47 and he's running and doing these workouts and he's able to get these results, well, maybe I could get those results if I did it. And so I challenge people to develop that competitive edge and that competitive mindset, because I believe that is what unlocks for many people that little bit of difference, that they're good. Bryce, I started this year, and I'll tell you, just getting real, I started this year at 15.5% body fat. Now, some standards in the world, that might be good. That might be average. That might be below average. I mean, it's a number. I came out swinging and said this year, my coach and I said, I'm going to get below 12% by July, because the 4th of July, I go with the family. Got below that to 11.5. And then I said, the competitive instinct turned on. My daughter actually said something that fired me up. She goes, when's the last time you were single digits? That's all I needed. A little bit of fire. I said, you know what? It's been a long time. I went for it, got all the way down to 9.5. And I think I'm probably 9 to around that right now. And I share all that with people to go, not how great Brian is. This is, I chose a goal, which you could choose. I got serious about it. I accomplished it. And then I realized there actually was another level, but I had to choose to compete. And most of you today that are listening to this, you know it, because I'm speaking to you right now. You know it. You are not competing to your fullest potential today. You're going in there and maybe you're giving 50%, 60%, and then you go put yourself on the sideline and the bench. And it's time to get back in the game and actually do the things that you were called to do and show up and compete in every area of your life. That's how winning gets done. That's how champions compete. And I believe that's why we're here to show that example is it can be done. And it's not perfect. It is hard. There's days that suck, but it's worth it.
Brian, one thing you just said about getting a coach. Your coach told you this. You scripted a game plan with your coach. For me, and I don't want to lead the witness here, but coaching has been the biggest breakthrough in my life from a fitness perspective, from a mindset perspective, from a business lens. Right now, humbling myself. I'm a fit dude. I'm about 10% body fat myself, get after it, et cetera. But my mobility and my flexibility is the weakest part of my fitness game. So, while I was frustrated, I just can't get it together. What do? I take a step back and I hire a coach for guidance, but also for accountability as well. So what's your relationship with coaching and how has that helped you in your career, both, right now in your career, but also, back in your athletic days?
What I know is my best seasons as an athlete is when I had the best coaches. That's just how it is. And what I learned being a goalkeeper is there were also specialists. And so what I have done over the last 7 to 8 years is I got a coach, but in seasons, I've got a very specific coach, right? It's that coach that you go, they are phenomenal at this. So for example, in our business, we do a lot of recruiting and team building and all of that. So I hired a very specific recruiting coach to help me build out the systems, hire the VA, get all the things together so we could actually build out systems and processes to our recruiting. Because what I realized is we were chasing people, we were cold calling, we'd have results, but they weren't there. The coach is the X factor for you. One, you need a coach. Number two, I'd tell you, you need the right coach. And that comes from clarity about where you are, just like you had the clarity, Bryce, of, hey, I want to work on this, my mobility and my flexibility. This is what I want. Go seek out and find the absolute best person. And I will tell you this as well. The coaches that you're just trying to get by and you're looking for the cheapest, you're going to get the cheapest results. I'm just going to be real with you. Like the people that I've paid the most money to, one of those I know we talked about, Ben Newman is one of the guys that I've worked with for a few years now. And Ben, I would tell you, is on the higher end of what he does because of his results, because he's a top 5 performance coach. When I've gone outside of my comfort zone, I've hired someone for a specific season, the breakthrough always outweighed the investment I put in. And it's still to this day, I go back and I remember things and I have processes and I have a program that I can go back to. I can teach other people. So I tell you, Bryce, like you don't want to compete against somebody that has a coach. You just do not want to have that disadvantage. And I look at sports and in business now, I can tell when someone doesn't have a coach because their lack of consistency and their lack of discipline, and even many times their lack of confidence is because they don't have someone in their corner that they can actually vet these things out with. See, I can be real with my coach and go, hey, I'm struggling with this. This is what's going on here. I have an amazing wife, like married 22 years. Nicole will shoot me straight. She'll tell me all kinds of things that I need to do or like I need to improve or I can ask her things. But there is a difference between when you get a coach in your corner and the right coach and they teach you the skills and they actually help you accelerate your growth because the coaches I've had have done things I haven't done yet. So I'm going to pay them to help me accelerate the speed in which we do it. So I'll close with this is you don't want to compete against the guys that have coaches because I know even in my CrossFit and kind of training now, the people that are serious and train and have the coaches working on nutrition and all the things like mobility and all you talked about, they have better results. It's just facts.
Bottom line. Brian, from your last response, there was one other item that I want to drill in a little bit as it pertains to not only success in life, but also leadership is your fitness. And you talked about you're a coach and getting dialed in 15% at the beginning of the year, sub 10, which is absolutely incredible. I don't want to lead the witness here, but my framework on leadership is lead yourself, lead your family, lead your empire. You can't lead a business empire unless you can lead your family, and you can't lead your family or an empire unless you can lead you. And for me, I believe fitness is the foundation and the highest form of self-leadership. So to me, it's no surprise that you're a super successful guy, had a storied career, sought after keynote speaker, and you're a super fit guy. So from your lens, how is that really having a strong foundation of fitness really shaped your mindset and also your ability to lead others? And if someone's listening to this right now and they're not in shape, can you talk to them maybe some strategies on how to take that next step so they can lead themselves and put themselves in a better position then to lead their family, lead their community, lead their empire?
Yeah, this is so important, Bryce. This is one. Look, guys, there's been periods in my life, like I was the overweight teenager that wore 2 t-shirts. I was eating pizza, Shoney's buffet, went to my doctor who happened to be our AAU basketball coach at the time. And I was around 13. I remember my blood pressure was so high. I was so overweight. All the things were pointing to a direction in my family with hypertension and high blood pressure and all this stuff. Like I'm headed early as a teenager down a horrible path. And so that was an intervention for me that was the first seed planted of your health matters. You don't get to do this over. And then like many people, I started to get in shape. I had this great run, right? Because I'm playing soccer and I'm going through college and all of that stuff. And I stay fit. We have our first 2 kids when I'm 30 and 31. And I kind of fall off again, right? Put on all the extra weight and all the things there. And then I have to go back through it again. And I look back, those seasons are hard. And so if you're in that right now, I just want you to know I've been there. And it's hard when you look at the number and you're like, I need to get from here to there. And what helped me through those seasons is I wanted to identify who did I want to become? And in the mirror and in my mind, Bryce, I have this vision of Brian as a leader, like what I look like, what I dress like, how I talk, the people I hang out with, how I show up for people. And I was not in alignment with that during those seasons. And if you're experiencing that right now, I would just urge you that is the voice inside of you, and maybe God even calling you saying, hey, it's time for you to take on the next challenge. And I believe our fitness leads to all the other areas, that discipline, that consistency. It is confidence. When you walk in a room and you have done the work, you can't buy the results that you have or I have. Like, you can't go out in the next 30 days if you're not in shape and just magically get to a 10 or 9% body fat. Like, just,
No, sir.
it does not happen. And what I have found, Bryce, that people don't talk about, because I want to kind of take this angle, is when you're around other high performers, and I've been fortunate enough, some of those in the stages and being in rooms of people, they recognize that before you say a word. I want you to imagine you walk into a room and before you've said anything, before you've introduced yourself, somebody looks at you and they go, clearly that person cares enough about themselves, has a high enough self-discipline to then take the action. And so there's somebody that at least they're going to invite into a conversation. Whereas we have to be real and honest about this. If somebody comes in, they're dressed sloppily, their hair's not done, they hadn't shaved in a long, like they're not put together well, and maybe they're significantly overweight. There are just signs and signals that you're sending that are telling that other person that you don't care enough about yourself to actually do that. Now, I get there's extremes to people that have issues and things. I'm talking about people that you can work out, you can control things, right? Like, that are happening. And Bryce, for many of us, we've been sold this lie. Like, if you look at what's in the media today, you look at what's acceptable in our schools, you look at what they're feeding our kids, look at all the crap that's being pushed at us.
Crazy.
You have to take this back. And you said it. The number one driver for me, outside of I have a vision that I believe God has called me to lead other men specifically and be an example, and I'm able to do it, so I must do it. The other ones, I have two boys, 15-year-old and a 9-year-old. If you don't think that they're watching me, we have a home gym and the things they do and how they show up. I'm not going to be the dad that doesn't train with them, that can't keep up and run with them, that they want to go ride their bikes and I'm not fit enough to do it with them. They want to go kick the soccer ball around. I'm like, man, I wish I could still do that. No, that ain't going to be this guy.
No.
And I believe that's actually part of my mission of what God's called me to do, and why I got so intense this year is I was actually convicted of, Brian, you're doing just enough. You're doing just enough. Like, you're not bad. You're not bad. But what if you broke through to that next level and you showed other men what was possible? It ain't going to be easy. I'll be the first one to tell you, it was difficult. There were days that I ran in the rain. There were days I would do 2-a-day trainings. There's days where my kids are eating ice cream and I want to go eat the ice cream. I want to have more pizza. I want to do this. But I look at what those choices and decisions have brought me to a point to now conversations that I'm able to impact people. So if you're a leader today and you want greater impact, it comes from your ability. Your tent that you build has to be so big with everything that you've done and able to serve other people that you can actually speak from a place that you've done it. Right? Because, like, I think about this as I can now guide somebody that they're at 20% body fat. Just use that as an example. How to get down to 15. They're at 15, they want to get to 10. I just went through that storm. I will walk them straight through it. Not all men will step through that, but the ones that do, just like I know you do, we're going to lead them through it, because other men need to step into this and realize their calling to show other men in their circle, this is what's possible. This is the standard for what we're going to do and what greatness is.
Man, so incredible. And I think that's why leadership is hard, is because as a leader, you are the standard. And something you said that I'll put in my own words is a lot of leadership is about demonstrating your, what the behaviors that you want your team, your family, your community to model. So that's just an important tenet of leadership. And I learned this terminology from the great John Maxwell, which I'm sure you've read a lot of his content as well. It's about moral authority. It's about walking your own talk. And it's simple. It's not easy. It's actually very challenging, but it's simple. Can you do the things that you're going to say you want to do? And can you model that behavior, not only for yourself, but for your family, for your following? And that's really what it all comes down to. The last thing, just going back about responsibility, Brian, when I'm hearing you, you clearly have a responsibility for yourself. You clearly hold a responsibility for your family, and you clearly have a responsibility to others. Because from my perspective, average is the enemy. Yeah, in your own words, you were good enough. You were doing just good enough. But something was calling you. That's not enough. That's not the guy that I want to be. That's not the husband that I want to be. That's not the father I want to be. That's not the leader that I want to be. I want to help men. I want to help my family. So from my perspective, I'm hearing the responsibility. I feel the responsibility you have, which is a sign of great leadership. Now, my
I'll
next
give you
question.
a little life hack on that too. This is some psychology for you that I'm fortunate with my dad. Is what we found in psychology for my listeners, you oftentimes will let yourself down before you'll let others down. And what I mean by that is when you've built a certain standard and you're living that way, you don't want to let your family down. You don't let your friends down. So like when you and I, when I've gotten to this point of being fit, there is a responsibility and there is a conviction to that I'm not going back. And I share that with people because I go, there are people counting on me that are going, well, if Brian can do it, he can keep doing it and he's going to stay consistent, then I can do it. Whereas if I just fell off the wagon, like many people do and go back to the old me, just good enough, I'm now in a way giving them permission. It might be the way that I think about it, but the psychology of that, if you're to dig into it, you're less likely to let other people down. And when they're counting on you to show up, and there's times I just pull from that energy and I show up. Like when I don't feel like it. That's how it works.
It's the essence of true leadership, and going back even to coaching, right? And this has been my experience. This is why coaching is so important. Number one, a strong coach gives you the way, shows you the blueprint, if you will. But in your words, which I coach my teammates all the time, human nature, we disappoint ourselves far more than we disappoint others. So have an accountability partner and a leader or a coach, and your results will just go through the roof. Brian, you've been very gracious with your time. There's one big topic, final topic, if you will, that I want to kind of round out this conversation. It's really about resilience, because there's no way you have accomplished the things you have in your life without not only a strong mindset, but a resilient mindset. So I want to talk a little bit about some principles in resiliency, but while leadership is about demonstrating, the path ahead, I also think that leadership is about, exposing or unveiling the kimono a little bit about, things that you've maybe had a mistake on or learning lessons, if you will. So from your perspective, how important is resilience? And maybe what are some of the learning lessons that you've experienced, in your career playing sports or now in your career leading, speaking, your organization?
Well, I love resilience for this reason is it's actually learned. And I think a lot of people say, well, this person, they had a tough upbringing, so they're just more resilient than I am. And I would tell you, we've all been through some stuff in our life. And how you choose to look at that and how you choose to respond to that and building your resiliency muscle is as easy as when we talk about going and working out every day. When I talk about going and doing the hard things every day. If you're in sales and you're a leader today and there's difficult conversations where you need to have, sales, outbound calls, cold calls, you're doing that type of work, the more you build that muscle, the more comfortable you get. In 07 and 08, I think back to, Bryce, that was when we had our first two kids. And if anybody knows what was happening then, it was the largest financial crisis we've seen in our lifetime, where I'm at Wells Fargo Bank. I'm watching the implodometer online of mortgage companies going out of the business. My job gets eliminated because, overnight, everything dries up. Like funding dries up. People aren't refinancing. People are losing jobs. Like the whole thing's shutting down. We have two kids. And we're in Tampa, Florida. We're originally from Memphis. So we have no family. And I remember I get laid off. Like, we're going to put you in a temporary role. We'll figure out what happens. But we really don't know what's going to happen. Like, we don't know where this is going to go. And I remember for me, it was much like in sports, the first time I had been cut from the national team and I fought my way to get back. And those lessons from getting cut and having to fight and realizing that you have to fight for what you believe and what you want. Nobody gives you anything. And the difference between me, I realized in this moment, Bryce and other people that got laid off, is I was asking everyone in the company, what can I do to help you? Are there things that I can go do? Hey, I'll go do that. I never asked for more money. And what that allowed me to do over that time was I was serving and serving. And one of those jobs, by the way, I was flying every week from Tampa, Florida up to the panhandle of Florida, unfortunately, closing branches, letting people go, and then meeting with the people we were going to keep. Imagine that dynamic of you're walking in and almost the Grim Reaper.
Yeah.
People know when you're coming in,
it's not good.
Somebody's getting let go.
Yeah, not good news.
Branches are closing. And at the same time, you're trying to motivate the other staff that you want to keep because some of them are profitable and you're going to keep this store because it's profitable. And I remember those lessons that it taught me about how people responded during that. And my compassion and empathy went to a new level because I'm a young leader at that point going, I just got laid off myself, right? Like I'm in a temporary role. And so I could relate to them. And I share all that with people just to tell you, like, those are the things that you need to draw from your experiences and what happened to you in your life. And I don't know your story or what has happened, but we've all had things happen where you had a choice to get up or to lay down. If you're listening to this, you chose to get up at some point. Now, Bryce, this served me later because I ended up having not exactly the same experience, but out of the blue, a leader and mentor of mine calls me and our team is performing. We're doing exceptionally well, like literally top 2 teams in the company. I get a call, I'll never forget, on Cinco de Mayo. My manager at the time says, hey, I got bad news. A couple people have reported they don't like your leadership style. We don't think you're a good fit here anymore. And I know you're making the company a lot of money and your team's doing great, but there's just some people that they just don't like you. They don't want to work for you anymore. So we're going to let you go. Okay. Like trying to digest that and go, hold on, I thought results mattered. Mm-hmm. Hold on, I thought I had good relationships with most everybody. These are the times in which your career, Extreme Ownership was the book that I actually picked up, Jocko Willink and Leif Babbitt. I remember the lesson in that for me was I needed to take full ownership of that. Forget all the other stuff, right? Like I'm not going into all the details of it, but it's one of those where I go, what is the lesson for me? And the resilience muscle that I was able to learn is Extreme Ownership. And then I read Dichotomy of Leadership. Is there were things in my leadership game that I needed to level up. Whether that was right or wrong, we'll leave that to be decided. But what I can tell you is I had certainty that the next week I was actually back with the company. They had rehired me in a different role. And they're like, we made a mistake, all these things. It's because of how I responded, Bryce. Had I responded as a baby and emotional and just gone, AWOL, wouldn't have happened. And so resiliency to me is built through these experiences. And it's also the day-to-day things you put yourself in difficult situations. And so I hope those stories, you can relate to them and you realize through my journey, those are just 2. I could go on and tell you about all the crap I've dealt with, all the things that have not gone as planned, all the things that we were talking about earlier with an investment going sideways. And I'm going, how did we get here? That resiliency muscle, I believe, is a choice. And it's one you need to study. You need to look at the people that have that around you and surround yourself with those types of people, because then you're not going to have quitters and people that are highly emotional in those situations. You need people that are high thinkers and high EQ, and then you respond and you become a different person. It's not perfect, but I respond very differently to stress and as things go sideways than I did 10 years ago. And that's just personal development. Yeah. That's the journey.
That's the journey. It's leading you, right, in my particular framework. And again, going back on not reacting, responding. And that is a tenet of strong leadership, my friend. So, Brian, this has been an incredible conversation. My last question for you, the name of my show is the CEO Show, the Chief Executive Officer Show. To you, what does it mean to be a CEO?
Oh, I love this. There's a framework I use with people of you move from this hustler, which is where I started, right? When I was consumer finance and I was a hustler, man. I was out on the weekends, dialing for dollars. A CEO to me starts with your mindset. A CEO thinks differently, they behave differently. You start to realize the biggest thing for me is I'm no longer trading my time for money. I now look at as a CEO, I'm building leaders. And those leaders need to have deep roots. They need to be strong. And they need to be able to weather storms. And the more leaders that you can create as a leader and a CEO, the more impact you're going to have and the more people that you're actually going to have the opportunity to serve. And so the CEO to me is I look forward, the type of CEO that I want to be is not only caring, empathetic, competitive, but one that people look back on, they're like, you know what? Brian always challenged me. He cared about me and he wanted the best for me. That type of CEO is what I strive to be. And I fall short a lot of days, but I will tell you, I strive to be that person, and I'm always learning and growing. And I think when you show up that way, you're going to win.
Amen to that. And from my perspective, this is something I've coined myself, my identity, and something I'm still continuing to strive for. But when you can be a leader of leaders, you can have infinitial or exponential infinite impact, which is really the name of the game here. So I want to acknowledge that point. Brian, man, this has been an awesome conversation. We've connected on social. It got introduced through a couple of mutual friends. I was just dying to have you on the show today, and you delivered. It was very enriching. Friends, I know you got a ton of value. I'm assuming you did. Please like and subscribe. Brian, before we shoot for today, in the case our audience hasn't been connected with you, where can they find you?
Go to our site, www.briancovey.com, or I hang out on Instagram. I respond to my own DMs, and it's the Brian Covey. Someone already took Brian Covey. Hit me up there. I'm on LinkedIn and Facebook. And if you do find value today, I always ask, man, let us know. That's how we know we're making an impact and what resonated. And so, Bryce, thanks for having me.
Yeah, you got it. And I want to thank you before we shoot today for your time. I know you're an incredibly busy guy, first and foremost, but more than that, for the way you show up, man, your energy, your enthusiasm, your leadership, which you are an incredible leader. And this is a tenet of this show. So I want to thank you for being you, my friend. Well, friends, I know you got a ton of value. One more time, please like and subscribe. And remember, adversity is your advantage, and we'll see you in the next episode.